So the very first thing you're going to do is obviously place the property under contract. And why? Why waste your time through the whole zoning process, rezoning process, or feasibility process if it's not under contract? Now you can't see the rest of my screen. If I were to make it larger, it would. I mean, you'll see all the steps. There's lots of steps here. You probably see all the chapters in my course. It is very, very meticulous. A lot of steps, a lot of different variables could happen. Um, a lot of things that have to happen, a lot of things that have to align if you're going to rezone a property. And I'm making it sound a lot more complicated than you think it may be, but truthfully, if you miss any of these steps, it could be a disaster and it could be a big loss. But you must place the property under contract. Placing the property under contract might allow you to add a contingency to your contract that if you do not get the approval of the city for a rezone, then you have nothing is stopping you from getting out of that contract. You may reverse 100% scot-free and be indemnified, and have your attorney write this up where they can't hold you accountable. You get all of your earnest money back, everything back, if it doesn't get approved. A contingency is very important. Not all owners will give you that option. You won't always get that option, but if you do get that option, write it in there. Make sure your attorney writes it well. Make sure your attorney is skilled in real estate specifically, and place the property under contract for purchase. Whether it's a creative acquisition or a bank financing purchase with a contingency on the bank, you can make it as creative as you like, but nothing happens until you get the property under contract. When you get the property under contract, you now have good faith with the seller that you're going to do your due diligence, and also with your investors that you're going to get through feasibility and you're going to start the process. You're going to start working with the city now. You're going to let them know that you intend to purchase the property. You intend to buy a piece of their city if they'll work with you, and both sides win. So the next step to this multi-step process to getting the rezoning and approaching the city is you have to know the history of the property. A lot of times the listing agent or the broker or a lot of times the owner won't tell you everything about the property. And there's probably a reason why they're not telling you everything. I'm not going to get into what's ethical and what's not ethical. For example, I know in the state of Arizona, you don't have to disclose that there was a murder, I think, at a property. I believe that's a law. I believe that's a rule, but strange things that some people don't have to disclose. Well, it's going to make you want to know why A, they're selling, and B, if they're full of it, if they made it up. Sometimes you'll find out that there's something deeper attached, just like the one that we bought in Texas. There was illegal activity. Use your imagination at a motel. Really use your imagination. And because of that illegal activity, they had to really shut it down. It was condemned. It was and it still wasn't shut down. So they were still operating illegally even after they were told to shut down. Not a good situation. So there's a big lien on the property. These next two steps are really important. You need to know what property you're dealing with. One of them is join local Facebook groups. I know that sounds strange, but Facebook now caters to a demographic that is older, 35 and up, all the way to my grandma before she passed was on Facebook. It is a community-driven, conservative platform. And most cities really rally around Facebook. They have Facebook pages, they have Facebook groups. You'll see buy, sell, trade on Facebook groups. You'll see community of LA on Facebook, or community of Gilbert, or community of Salt Lake City, or you'll see these names of cities and it'll say community or group, official group, and then you'll see tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people inside that group. So it's popular. When you go in those groups, you can use the search bar and search the name of your motel or hotel that you're about to acquire, or the property address, and you will find a lot of data. Maybe you'll find police reports. Maybe you'll find theft reports. Maybe Maybe you'll find that the building is under condemnation, and you have to reach out to the city of or the state of Texas to remove the lien, like we did. Maybe the whole neighborhood doesn't want that building to be there. Either way, you got to research the building and the operations. If you do that, you're able to have better leverage when you're negotiating the deal, because remember, negotiations don't stop just because the property's under contract. You negotiate the contract all the way to close of escrow. So it is a big negotiation. Knowing more about the property is going to help you. In Arizona, there is a SPDS report in residential, which is a seller property disclosure statement. You can ask for them to fill that out. They don't always have to or want to. But you need to do your own due diligence. You have to go talk to the locals. Don't believe everything the locals tell you either, but you're going to start seeing a correlation and a pattern. And once you research and appropriately evaluate if the property is a feasible purchase and it's not such a damaging asset to own, because yeah, there's times when it could be. I mean, these are motels. This is the lowest rung on the ladder of living. Okay. When a tenant doesn't qualify for an apartment or a condo or a house, they go to the motels. That's what you're buying. Or hotels. Either one of those. Interior, exterior corridor, you know. So if they're going there, you're going to see illicit activity follow. And that's why it's so important for you to understand the history behind those buildings before you proceed to work with the city. Also, when you're working with the city and you happen to know about that history before you approach them, that's going to help you prepare with an answer or a point of leverage. I can't tell you how important this step is. Building rapport with key city people is so important that if you do this right, the process by which you get the approval for the rezoning of that asset multiplies. That the probability for you to get what you need multiplies. Building rapport is so important. What are some ways you can build rapport? Well, we'll talk about it here in a bit, but one way is to get to know them online, because we live in an online world. Like their posts, send them a friend request, maybe a message. Let everyone know that you're excited to be in the city. You're excited to be a part of the city, the municipality. I know this sounds really grassroots and it sounds like a lot of work, but this is important. If people don't like you, they're not going to want to give you what you want, which is just such a true principle in all things business. Remember that these folks that work for the city, they're not paid commission. They don't get sales spiffs or bonuses. They get the same salary no matter what. So you're not doing them any favors right out the gate just by saying, hey, I'm going to rezone the property. Build a rapport with them. Become a friend. And then it's time for you to submit a letter of intent. So you put it under contract, you've done some research online, you built some friendships, you found out who the city manager was, you found out who the city mayor is, you found out who the planning and zoning, building, engineering, code enforcement officers are. You found out who all these people are. Maybe you sent them lines, you wrote a hello message online, or maybe you gave them a call and just let them know that you're excited to work with them, introduced yourself. After introducing yourself and showing up at the city, letting everyone know that you're excited to be there and you have really exciting improvements that you intend to instill in the city to make the city even better, it's time to create a letter of intent. We call it the community improvement letter of intent. It's a really fun way to say this is what I want to do. Community improvement is key because you are improving the community. We'll talk about why the community will benefit greatly and how you can leverage that inside of your letter and inside of your discussions at the city zoning hearings, or even at the city level meetings, either Zoom or in person. But just know that that letter of intent needs to be straightforward, and it needs to be cordial, honest, concise, and it needs to come off as though you've done this before. in the letter or attach the letter, if you have previous projects that you've done, show it. If you have previous projects that maybe are different asset classes, maybe they're not even a hotel conversion, maybe it's just a renovation of a property in the city or from a different city or a different place or a different commercial project you've done in the past, and you beautified it and made it gorgeous, show what it was worth before, what it's worth later. You're basically telling the city that you're making the money and you're providing much needed jobs and housing and all that jazz. Building that community improvement letter of intent is so important because you're laying out why they should even entertain working with you. It just shows air of professionalism that I think a lot of people lack. Yes, donuts, lots of donuts and coffee and more donuts. Um, After you deliver the letter, introduce yourself in person, show up, give a gift, write a big thank you card to the city of X or whatever city you're buying and converting this property in. Really do a high energy effort, put in a high effort, put in high energy effort to make sure that they know that you are there to add value. And then call for a city redevelopment or city development request. Excuse me, city development meeting. The city development request meeting is really important. Not every city will do it. The ones that do it, they know what they're doing. And the reason why they do it is so that they can bring all the heads of every department, the fire marshal, um, city code enforcement groups, engineering, planning, zoning, city management, housing. They're going to bring them all in the same room on a Zoom call or in person if you're able to. Better in person if you can. Get a representative out there, someone who's in person that can shake a hand, that can take any number of the members of the city out to lunch afterwards. I mean, again, you're back to rapport building and you're increasing your odds of getting it approved. Remember, each one of these heads needs to approve your request for rezone. Every single one needs to approve it. So get on their good graces, right? Call for this city development request meeting. And when you do, this is where you're going to get all the data. They're going to give you a list. They already have it. They probably have it on their website. Most cities do. A development request for adaptive reuse or a request for development. You need to submit this. We need this paperwork. Your articles of operation. Where you're doing business. We have a really fun form that we want you to fill out. This form is super annoying, and maybe we built it back 18 years ago, but we need you to fill out this form. Um, they're going to have all sorts of questions for you and fees to pay. Some municipalities don't have any fees to pay on a development request meeting. So it's wild. Every single municipality has its own DNA. They're all different. But call for the city meeting. And before the meeting, make sure you send an email letting them know that you want to reiterate that your goal is, and just point right back to the letter of intent, is to add value to the city, create jobs, create housing, create more city income, and improve the area. If it's an eyesore or if there's a lot of problems, which a lot of motels and hotels have problems, you can highlight that as a reason to grant you the zoning you need. And a lot of times it works. It really does. So make sure you treat them well, get them the donuts and coffee, show up, be a team player, let them know that you're in the neighborhood, you're local. You're local now. Maybe if it's not you, it's someone you hire who's great with people and just an awesome relationship manager, and send them out and have them be total friends to the city. You're going to get a lot further if you do. Right. So you attended the city meeting, the city development request meeting, and it was a great meeting. Everybody had great things to say. They were excited that you came. You started this whole thing on the right foot. You've already built great relationships with some of the city managers or city officials, I should say. So everybody's happier there. It's now time to take that list, because in that meeting they did give you a list of everything that they, off the top of their head, because they didn't research this ahead of time. They never do, or they rarely do. you got a list of all the things that they're going to want. Well, eventually they're going to give you a large list of everything they want, right? They're going to say, you have to install fire sprinklers because now you've made this residential and you're rezoning. So fire sprinklers are a must. You must run this through an asbestos scope. We need tests and samples to make sure there's no asbestos. And if it's an older motel, there probably is. So you're going to have to abate that, by the way. You didn't have to if you kept this a hotel. You're going to, well, that's not always true either, which we'll talk about in another training. There's a long list. You're going to have extra parking spaces. Those extra parking spaces you have zero room for because there's a minimum required 2 parking spaces per unit. You're going to have to change the doors. Maybe the doors are older and they're not the residential code doors, or they're not fireproof doors. You may have to add separation between the units, which is going to require you to open walls and separation. It's called 1 hour or 2 hour separation. It's a UIL code that your city may require, your fire marshal may require. If there's a fire in one of the units, it doesn't spread to the next unit so fast. It spreads maybe in 1 hour time. Usually that just means there's more drywall, or there's more separation with an additional 2x4s or 2x6s that have create extra space between the units, which we'll talk about in another training. But there's a lot of things that they're going to ask for. And these things are not set in stone, just so you know. It's all negotiable. There are even attorneys out there that can help you negotiate these things, but a lot of this you can do. And some of these things are going to happen no matter what, like fire sprinklers, no matter what. They're going to require that those get installed no matter what, for the most part. But for other items, maybe they want you to put a masonry brick wall behind the hotel or the motel, which will not be converted because they don't, if there was a fire, they don't want that to catch on fire, the fence. There's some silly ones out there like that where you can renegotiate that, use a different material because that's very expensive, right? And that wasn't in your budget probably. So you find out that they're going to require you to upgrade your electrical, your plumbing, your grounds. It may not be a deal anymore. They may have destroyed your deal, of which it's not a dead deal yet. It's just a renegotiation with the seller. And maybe instead of a rezone, you're going to add features to the property to make it more apartment style, but it's still a hotel. So submit rezoning or conditional permit or construction permit request. These cost money, and during feasibility, you're going to be spending that money. So you're going to want to submit it. You're going to want to ensure that it's written very professionally, and you're going to want to submit it with renderings that are well built. Now, if you have a really good connection to someone who can build renderings and it's official and legitimate, then great. I don't necessarily love to spend that kind of cash. It's $30,000 or more for a design team to build it out for you, and it's a lot of work because this is design build. Design build is expensive. New build is a lot easier because you're starting from scratch. You can template it out. You can build something up on AutoCAD or Revit, and voila. This is a design build. So you got to go to the property. You got to make sure you take pictures. You got to measure walls. You got to ensure that you know exactly what materials are already there previous to your construction project. It's a lot of work. So I recommend you go on Fiverr or Upwork and you find an architectural design artist to create renderings for you after you take a ton of photos of it, of what it could look like and what it may look like when it's all completed. Give them a vision. Let them know that you will get official plans, but the plans are going to evolve around this vision with these renderings, artistic renderings that you give them. That usually is enough. If they do ask for legitimate plans and design, then you're going to have to do that, which totally bites because that's really expensive during feasibility. But it's important to do so that the city knows you're serious about the project, and the city knows that you're out to do this the right way. All right. Well, you submitted your request for a rezone. They're going to call a meeting. There's going to be a zoning hearing. There's going to be a citywide meeting. And, in this whole process, they're going to be sending letters to nearby neighbors. They're going to be inviting everyone to come to either oppose or approve. That district of the city is going to have a commissioner involved, basically giving his input or her input on the request to rezone. It's a lot of work. It's a lot, just so you know. So be ready for that long haul. This is going to be a 6 month, maybe longer, just back and forth. You have to be patient in these meetings. Be kind, be cordial, be positive, have a smile. Um, if you ever come off as impatient, angry, frustrated, they're going to feel that. They're going to feel that, and they're going to take that into account when they make a decision whether they're going to grant you the zoning or not. You might ask for tax concessions. You may ask for a partial certificate of occupancy. Tax concessions in like a state like Texas would be really important. And tax concessions make sense. If you're going to put in, millions of dollars into a property, um, that's going to come back for the city. Remember, the city makes money on taxes, right? Um, so taxes are being paid. They're going to make a buck there, and they're also making money on permits and fees and all sorts of things. There's assessments they're gonna have you pay just for investing in their city, just for renovating a building in their city. There's going to be fees you have to pay. So ask for the tax concessions. Um, you may want to get a tax attorney or a local attorney there to help you do this. But when you ask for a tax concession, you're basically saying, look, can you cut me a break for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? I'm going to be putting some serious cash in this building. It will increase your overall returns if you do this and get it approved. The other thing that we ask for is a partial certificate of occupancy. Now, why would you do this? Well, a certificate of occupancy is obviously a certificate from the city saying you can now sell your rooms. You can sell nightly rates if you're a hotel. You could sell leases if you're a multifamily asset. You can now operate. You can do business. If you have a massive building with like 50 over here and 50 over there in two different wings, wing A and wing B, well, you can shut down wing A and still operate in wing B and not lose cash flow. So having a partial certificate of occupancy and pushing for that could be really smart. It also shows your investors that you care about their capital. Um, and if you're paying hard money, or if you're paying private money, or if you're paying pref, you raised a fund and you owe pref equity every year, then you're going to want to have some cash flow come in. And this is a great way to do so, is to negotiate partial certificate of occupancy. Now, with that being said, you need to make sure that your general contractor understands all of the requirements the city have for your partial certificate of occupancy. And we'll have a whole training on contractors. Believe me, I've been through the worst of them. I've been through great ones. Just we'll talk about that. But that's what a partial C of O is. You also have available grants out there for super old buildings that are in areas of gentrification in the city. There's potentially city funds for improvements or grants available for you. You just have to ask. Ask who is in charge, and then go to that individual and ask what those grants cover. You'd be surprised. I'd say a lot of times those grants you really can't do anything with, and they're more for like historic society stuff, or sometimes there are housing grants, but you just need to ask. Variances, which we talked about prior, variances are important because most hotels and motels don't have, for example, enough parking spaces to unit ratio. A lot of cities require two or more, 2.5, three parking spaces per unit. There is. Now, a lot of these hotels and motels don't have that. They may have 1-to-1 ratio, one parking space, one unit. That's problematic, especially if you're rezoning. So getting a variance helps you get a pass from meeting that code requirement. If there's enough room in your parking lot, you let the city know that you intend to get a civil engineer and redraft where those parking spaces would be so that you are up to code. So letting them know that is actually super wise because then they know that you got it under control. And then code leniency, asking for, hey, I need you to give me a break on this one or on this one because maybe it's not economically feasible to be up to code for things that maybe are not so much hazardous, but just by principle. Here's an example: green space. A lot of municipalities have a required amount of green space, percentage of green space. Yes, vegetation, shrubs on multifamily assets. Well, what if there's not enough room to meet that demand? You need to ask for a variance, need to ask for code leniency. One thing I want you to remember is four things I want you to remember is you are adding jobs to the city. You're providing housing for the city. You're increasing the city's income and you're removing a lot of that riffraff. Let's be honest, people that are in a motel, if you're buying it, or a hotel, and you're buying it to convert, it's probably not in the best condition. It probably needs work. There's probably issues with it. And if there are issues with it, you're going to want to really highlight that when you're at the city. This should be inside of your letter of intent. This should be inside of your conversations with city officials when you're one-on-one with them or out to lunch or you're just chatting with them. This should be a discussion that you have there, is that you're here to improve that community. You're funny enough, one thing in my experience that the city wasn't totally, which is very odd, that wasn't totally, didn't really care about was increasing the city's income. It seems as though cities have this bureaucratic, anti-capitalist sentiment. So you want to be very careful not to come off as this high and mighty, arrogant, um, you know, capitalist figure that's coming in to develop the world, right? Because there are officials that don't like that. They probably really care about the local teachers and law enforcement and locals who need housing and helping the community. So stick to that. You're adding jobs, you're providing housing, you're removing a lot of the delinquency, vandalism, and crime. And yes, in the end, you are increasing their income. We already covered this, but follow up. You must follow up. Follow up is a principle that doesn't end anywhere. Not only follow up, but take them out, buy them lunch, really be a friend, really let them know that you care. You want to be right, do right by them, and you want to make the city a better place. Don't come off as schmoozing. Be very careful with that. There's a fine line there. There really is a fine line there. I'm not going to tell you where that line is, and careful not to bribe. You do not want to pay somebody to do favors. Okay. You do want to negotiate with the city, and a lot of times there's monetary considerations that are exchanged, but you don't want to pay individuals cash to do favors for you. Be very careful, be honest, be ethical, and be patient. I put a whole box here about being patient because it's so darn important. You may have to show additional proof of prior projects or renderings. And if you don't have that, then you're going to want to work with someone who has. I can work with you. If you need someone to come on board and help you present the case to the city, to help you talk to the city official, either in a Zoom or in person, whatever it may be, I can help you do that. I can show a lot of the that I've completed, full cycle that I've been a part of, and let them know that the process worked this way, and we're willing to work with you, city officials, to ensure a proper and smooth transaction. Of course, I wouldn't do that for everybody. Definitely need to verify the deal, and we need to qualify ourselves to see if we want to work with each other. But I am available for that. Make sure to reach out to me. And then you need to get feedback and city notes and promptly respond. Don't wait. If there's city notes and feedback, respond as soon as you can. Don't incriminate yourself by answering it poorly. If you need to leverage an attorney, please do so. But, be honest, be upfront, and be ethical, and talk to the city officials quickly and promptly and answer their questions that they have. All right. So you got the approval. You get the approval letter after going back and forth, maybe a few months of negotiating what items you were going to change, what improvements you were going to make and not make. And the city's happy, you're happy, everyone's happy. You get a letter, which is an approval for a rezone. This is such an exciting time because now you can close the deal. You got the approval. When you get the approval, your seller is probably if you had more room to negotiate, if you had an opportunity to negotiate a better deal, do it before you get the approval, because once you get the approval, it's kind of set in stone. Um, if the seller's done negotiating, he's done negotiating, but this approval from the city is what you're after. Now you have a more profitable deal. Let's talk about that. If you're still raising money and you got the approval and you still have time in your feasibility before you close the deal, hopefully you have the money that you need. But let's say you wanted to raise more. It's a lot easier to raise the money now that you have an approval for a rezoning, because now your property is a valuable asset to exit with, to present before buyers. There are a lot more buyers out there for multifamily assets than there are hotel buyers. There just are. So it's kind of an exciting time. Now you can get on your horse and talk to as many potential partners as you like to raise additional funds or final funds or whatever you lack. This is exciting. Congratulations. You figured out how to analyze the research behind the property, put it under contract, and start the process of working with the city. This is a very high overview of working with the city. There's a lot more modules that I'll be discussing, where there's deeper conversations with city officials and paperwork and instructions that are going to require the help of a general contractor or engineering team. But overall, you got most of this complete, and it's all inside this training, this high, very high, 10,000 foot vertical view overview of how to approach the city and work with them on a rezone. So thanks for joining, and check out the other trainings.